Imagine two people earning the same salary, living in the same city, facing the same rent, the same grocery prices, the same insurance bills, the same quiet pressure to keep up with everyone around them, but one of them has almost nothing saved, while the other has $100,000 set aside between cash, retirement accounts, and investments. On paper, their lives may look similar from the outside because they might drive normal cars, wear normal clothes, and work normal jobs, but psychologically, they are not living in the same world anymore. One person experiences every unexpected bill as a threat, every job problem as a crisis, every price increase as another weight on the chest, while the other person still has problems, still has responsibilities, and still has uncertainty. But now there is space between the problem and panic. That space is the hidden power of the first major wealth threshold. And this is why $100,000 changes everything. The number itself is not magical, and it does not make someone rich in the way social media often portrays wealth. It does not remove the need to work, it does not protect someone from every mistake, and it does not guarantee financial independence. But $100,000 matters because it sits at the point where money begins to behave differently. Before that threshold, most people experience saving as slow, fragile, and almost invisible. They put money away, then a repair comes, a medical bill comes, a move comes, a family emergency comes, and the progress seems to disappear. The emotional feedback loop is painful because effort is immediate, but reward is delayed. You sacrifice today, yet your balance barely moves. You skip purchases, cook at home, choose the cheaper option, and after months of discipline, the number still looks small compared to the cost of life. This is where financial psychology becomes more important than most people realize. Because early wealth building often feels unrewarding, not because the strategy is broken, but because the scale is still too small for the system to show visible momentum. If someone has $1,000 invested and earns a 5% return in a year, that is $50 before taxes and fees, which feels almost meaningless compared to rent, food, gas, or a single unexpected bill. If someone has $10,000 invested, the same 5% return becomes $500, which is better, but still not life-changing. But when someone reaches $100,000, that same 5% return becomes $5,000 in a year, and suddenly the money is no longer just sitting there as a symbol of discipline. It begins to participate in the person's financial life. The math is simple, but the feeling is profound. At smaller balances, the main engine is your labor, your savings rate, your ability to spend less than you earn, and your willingness to repeat boring decisions without much applause. At larger balances, your behavior still matters, but another engine begins to turn alongside you. The portfolio starts producing movement that is visible enough to notice. A normal market increase might add more in 1 year than the person used to save in several months. Dividends, interest, retirement contributions, employer matches, and market appreciation begin to feel less like abstract finance words and more like a machine that slowly gets heavier and stronger. This is not automatic wealth, and it is never guaranteed because markets move up and down. But the point is that capital finally becomes large enough to have meaningful motion. The real shift is not only mathematical, it is psychological. When someone has no cushion, life trains them to think in short time horizons. The brain becomes focused on the next bill, the next paycheck, the next due date, the next problem that could knock everything over. This kind of pressure can make long-term thinking feel almost impossible, because when the present is unstable, the future becomes a luxury, but a six-figure financial base changes the internal conversation. The question slowly moves from, how do I survive this month, to how do I make better decisions over the next 5 years? That shift matters because the wealthier mindset is not just about wanting more money. It is about having enough stability to think clearly, compare options, avoid rushed decisions, and stop treating every financial choice like an emergency. This is why the first 100,000 is often described as one of the hardest parts of the journey. Not because the number is impossible, but because the early phase requires the most discipline with the least visible reward. It is like pushing a heavy wheel from a complete stop. At first, almost all the force comes from you. Every inch feels earned. Then, after enough repetition, the wheel begins to carry some of its own momentum. In money terms, the first stage is built through savings, consistency, restraint, career growth, and avoiding decisions that destroy progress. The second stage still requires those things, but compounding begins to matter more. The person is no longer only trading hours for dollars. They are slowly building a structure where previous dollars can support future dollars. There is also a systemic reason this threshold matters. Modern life is full of traps that punish people for being undercapitalized. When you do not have enough cash, you may pay more through late fees, credit card interest, bad financing terms, emergency borrowing, missed opportunities, and rushed purchases. Being short on money can make everything more expensive because you cannot always wait, negotiate, buy in bulk, repair early, move strategically, or say no. This is one of the quiet mechanics of the economy. The people with less margin often pay more for urgency, while the people with more margin can choose timing. $100,000 does not remove every disadvantage, but it creates a buffer against the expensive side of urgency. The threshold also changes identity, and identity quietly controls behavior. A person with almost no savings may see themselves as someone trying not to fall behind, while a person who has built a meaningful base may begin to see themselves as someone who manages capital. That difference sounds small, but it affects daily choices. When money becomes part of your identity in a calm and responsible way, you start asking different questions. You may ask whether a purchase supports the life you are building, whether a subscription is still useful, whether a car payment is worth the trade-off, whether a career move improves long-term flexibility, or whether lifestyle upgrades are quietly slowing the machine you worked so hard to build. The goal is not to become afraid of spending. The goal is to understand that every dollar has a job, even when that job is simply giving you peace. But this is also where many people face a new trap. After reaching a major milestone, it can be tempting to treat the number as permission to relax completely, inflate lifestyle, and prove success outwardly. The danger is that $100,000 can feel big emotionally while still being relatively fragile in the context of housing, healthcare, family responsibilities, inflation, and long retirement timelines. This is why the threshold should be seen less as a finish line and more as a platform. It is not the moment to become careless. It is the moment when the system finally begins to reward patience in a visible way, and protecting that momentum becomes just as important as reaching it. In the end, $100,000 changes everything because it changes the relationship between effort, time, and fear. It turns money from a short-term shield into the beginning of a long-term engine. It gives the brain more room to think, the household more room to breathe, and the future more room to become something planned rather than something feared. The number does not make life easy, and it does not guarantee any specific outcome, but it marks the point where discipline can start to compound, where options begin to expand, and where financial decisions can become less reactive and more intentional. That is the quiet power of the first major wealth threshold. Not that it makes someone rich overnight, but that it gives them something far more useful: momentum.